No, the difference with Annex Wealth Management, at Annex we do holistic planning, and maybe that sounds a little new age, but it's not. Let's try the word comprehensive. Clients receive investment and retirement planning, tax planning, estate planning services, and that's where our next guest comes in. Welcome back to the show, estate planning attorney, Annex Wealth Management, Jill Martin. Hey, Jill.
Thanks, Danny. Good to be here.
Got to tell you, I read recently it takes an average of 570 hours to settle an estate. I was shocked. That is a big number.
That is a big number, and I don't know that that's completely accurate. That might be a little on the high end, but it really depends on the complexity of that estate and the asset mix that may be being passed on to the next generation.
You said it, the more valuable the estate, maybe the longer it takes to settle. And again, this was a company that kind of peddles this service, so maybe they're on the high end to kind of scare people. But settling estate, review me on this, it falls to the executor, right?
It does when we're talking about probate and using a will, okay? So that's when a quote-unquote executor or a personal representative, if someone has a revocable trust as part of their estate plan, that duty would fall onto a trustee. In addition, sometimes there isn't one of those people. If everything went through beneficiary designations, it's on the beneficiaries to contact and file the claim forms and all those things. So it can really be divided among a variety of different people that have to quote-unquote settle the estate.
I learned that firsthand, right? And you kind of helped me through that. My dad's estate was set up in a beneficiary manner, but still there were a couple things that we needed some help on. Thank you, Annex Wealth Management and Jill Martin. What is the job of the executor?
There's a couple core things that executor needs to do. Number one is they have to safeguard all of those assets and that property for the benefit of the beneficiaries. Okay, so that means you have to figure out what are all the assets, what are they worth, what do we do with them? You come across situations where the executor isn't necessarily a beneficiary. It might be someone else or a corporate individual that's really there to do what's in the best interest of the family. And so sometimes that executor might have some conflicts of interest as a beneficiary and an executor, and you want to make sure you're finding a good person to do that.
It's funny you bring that up, and we talked about this on the Annex Wealth Management YouTube channel. There's a playlist of 20 videos dedicated to estate planning, and it is worth a visit. We have one that I nicknamed, Should Your Brother-in-Law Bob Be Your Executor? Spoiler alert, I think we determined he should not be.
I agree with you on that one. I think we did in that segment determine that maybe Bob's not the right choice.
We're talking about the hours and the work. Maybe these people have full-time jobs. They're grieving as well if they're a loved one. 570 hours, as you said, is a lot, but 57 hours is a lot. What makes that number climb?
It really depends on the complexity of the assets, right? If you've got a couple of bank accounts, and maybe an annuity or something like that, it's going to be fast and easy. But if you have a house or a piece of real estate, it's going to need to be valued. It's going to need to be cleaned out. Let's think about just how long would it take you to clean out your parents' house? That could be 57 hours in and of itself. If they've been hoarders or they've collected things over the years, there are services you can hire to help do a lot of these things, but you are still the responsible party as that executor that needs to coordinate and manage all of that.
Are executors compensated?
They certainly can be. In the state of Wisconsin, a personal representative is allowed to take a percentage fee based on the value of the assets that are going through the probate process. So they can take a fee and be compensated to do that. It's taxable income to them and it has to be reported, but they can be compensated.
So having a well-crafted estate plan, that should be the goal. Let's do estate planning 101. Before you get into the specifics of like assets, you really do need a conversation with the person, right?
You do, right? It used to be that people would feel honored. Oh, you've named me as your executor or your trustee. That might not necessarily be the honor that you think it is. With it comes a lot of work, as we've talked about today. So you want to make sure that the person that you're naming, A, is capable, that they are going to have the time and maybe the expertise to be able to handle finances and manage things like that. You want to be careful about who that is. And that's really, really important because you also want to make sure you're telling them that you've named them in that role. I've talked to many of our clients who they didn't even know they were named in an estate plan to be an executor. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I don't know anything about this person's finances. I don't even know where to start. That makes the process hard too.
How granular should it be? I mean, there are fights, you hear season ticket fights, even like cherished rings or something. That's a good idea to define that stuff, but that could be exhausting. At the very least, the pre-conversation would maybe prevent some nasty fights.
It can. So I always tell people that communication of the estate plan is a critical element in the process. It's usually the last piece that's done, and it doesn't necessarily need to talk about the finances that are involved, but you want to talk to them about the overall plan and the strategy of the estate. That conversation allows you to head off some of those battles. But as we all know, when someone passes away and there's money involved, people can get a little crazy. I've seen awful situations. To your point, the Packer tickets, right? I've seen 3 grown men fight over mom's handwritten recipe cards. You can't predict that. You can't put that into the estate plan because you have no idea, right? So you can do as much planning as you can, but sometimes there are just going to be issues that crop up that you can't pre-plan for.
But bottom line, get a plan prior to passing that's going to cut down on the time, the energy, and the cost of settling that estate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because what happens is if you don't have a plan, then nobody's really in charge. And so then it becomes who's going to take responsibility to do all of these things, because somebody's going to need to step up. And if there's liabilities involved, it very well could be a creditor that's going to step in and deal with this. And that's probably the worst case scenario that you could have.